with wisdom and compassion, like honey from a bee of Yudhishthira. Markandeya began the ways of righteousness, are supple and diverse, yet infinite in their complexity. In times of great need it is sometimes necessary to bend the truth, for untruth can often lead to the triumph of truth. Itself virtue, however, can be perverted, its paths twist and turn like a winning river, and only those with keen insight can navigate them. As Markandeya spoke, his eyes seemed to gaze into the very soul of Yudhishthira, as if searching for any hint of doubt or uncertainty. Man's actions are either good or bad, he continued, and he reaps their consequences like a farmer harvesting his crops. The ignorant, blinded by their own karma, often abuse the gods, unaware that their suffering is but a reflection of their own misdeeds. The force grew darker, as if mirroring the depths of Markandeya's words. No person can be the dispenser of their own lot, he declared. Their actions in past lives ripen like fruit on the tree of karma, and they are reborn into this world, bearing the weight of their accumulated deeds. Yudhishthira listened intently, his face a mask of concentration, as Markandeya's words painted vivid pictures in his mind. The faller's voice wove a spell of wonder and awe, drawing Yudhishthira deeper into the mysteries of karma. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Markandeya paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle upon Yudhishthira. Like a gentle rain, the Brahmana's eyes sparkled with curiosity, and he asked, "O best of those versed in the doctrine of karma, how does the soul become eternal?" Markandeya smiled, his face aglow with the knowledge he had gained from countless lifetimes. "The spirit dies not," he said, "but merely changes its tenement. He is mistaken to believe that all creatures die. Rather, they are reborn into new forms, their karma guiding them like a river flowing towards the sea. As the night deepened, Markandeya's words flowed like a river, carrying Yudhishthira on a journey through the realms of karma and rebirth. The virtuous faller spoke of the Elysian regions, where those who had purified themselves by their actions and practiced austerity and meditation dwelled in blissful ignorance of miseries. Sinful man, addicted to vices, Markandeya warned, never comes to an end of his course of iniquities.
In a serene forest played the wise sage. Markandeya sat in quiet contemplation, his eyes gazing into the distance, as he began to speak of a most extraordinary encounter. "Hear, O king Yudhishthira," he said, his voice low and soothing, "of the virtuous faller who revealed to me the secrets of human nature." As Markandeya spoke, the scene shifted to a tranquil clearing where a Brahmana sat in quiet reverence, surrounded by the gentle rustle of leaves. He was engaged in conversation with a humble faller whose eyes sparkled with an inner light as he shared his profound insights. The faller began, "Men's minds are first bent on acquiring knowledge, but soon they succumb to their passions and desires. They labor tirelessly, indulging in the fleeting pleasures of life, beauty, flavor, and all that is desirable." His words dripped with a sense of melancholy as he continued. "Then follows fondness, envy, avarice, and finally the extinction of spiritual light." As the faller spoke, his words wove a tapestry of human fallibility. He explained how men, blinded by their desires, lose sight of righteousness and instead indulge in hypocrisy. They accumulate wealth through dishonorable means, and with each step down this path they become more enamored with evil. The Brahmana listened intently, his eyes filled with a deep understanding. As he nodded in agreement, the faller continued, "When wise men remonstrate with them, they offer specious answers that are neither sound nor convincing." His words painted a picture of the destructive power of addiction to evil ways. As the conversation unfolded, the faller revealed the threefold sin that afflicts those who succumb to wickedness. Their thoughts, words, and actions become tainted by malice, and their good qualities wither away. Like autumn leaves, they cultivate friendships with others of similar character, and in doing so they invite suffering into their lives. As the Brahmana's eyes shone with gratitude as he acknowledged the faller's profound insights, "Thou hast given a true exposition of religion," he said, his voice filled with reverence. "Your spiritual power is great, and you appear to me like a great rish." With a gentle bow, the faller began to describe what pleases the wise men of this world. He spoke of the Brahmanic philosophy, which holds that the universe is an expression of the unchanging, all-encompassing Brahma. The elements, earth, air, water, fire, and sky, are but manifestations of this supreme reality. As the faller's words flowed like a river, he revealed the intricate web of properties that underlies the universe. He spoke of form, odor, sound, touch, and taste, each with its own unique characteristics and correlations. The three qualities consciousness, intelligence, and egoism.
In the midst of a tranquil forest, Markandeya sat with Bharata, sharing tales that had been passed down through generations. As the sun's warm rays danced across their faces, Markandeya began to speak in a soothing voice to Bharata. I have heard the story of a wise Brahmana who was once approached by a virtuous follower. He said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. The Brahmana, known for his vast knowledge and understanding of the universe, was asked by the follower to describe the properties of the five great elements: earth, water, fire, air, and sky. As Markandeya spoke, a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves, carrying the whispers of ancient wisdom. The follower, eager to learn from the Brahmana's vast knowledge, inquired about the characteristics of each element. The earth, the Brahmana explained, possesses five qualities: sound, touch, form, odor, and taste. Water, on the other hand, has four properties: sound, touch, form, and taste, while fire and air share three common attributes: sound, touch, and form. Markandeya's words wove a tapestry of understanding as he described how these elements intertwine, forming the very fabric of existence. And so, O Bharata, he continued, these 15 properties inherent in the five elements exist within all substances that make up our universe. They are not opposed to one another, but rather coexist in perfect harmony. As the forest creatures settled into their evening routines, Markandeya's narrative turned to the concept of Veta and Avyekta, the noble and unknowable aspects of reality. When a person engages in self-examination after subduing their senses, they behold their own spirit pervading the universe. He said, his voice filled with reverence. Bharata listened intently as Markandeya described how this union with the divine essence brought about spiritual enlightenment. The person who has overcome illusion and is wedded to their previous karma may still be cognizant only of their soul's objective existence. Markandeya explained, but one whose soul remains unaffected by external conditions is never subject to suffering, for it is absorbed in the elementary spirit of Brahma. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Markandeya shared a poignant truth, that self-discipline was the key to attaining spiritual light. Our senses are at the root of both our spiritual advancement and degradation. He said, his words echoing through the forest like a gentle stream. By subduing them, we can attain salvation. By indulging in them, we contract vices. As the night deepened, Markandeya's narrative took on a new tone as he compared the human self to a chariot and the soul to its driver, a dexterous man. He said, in the presence of King Bharata, the wise follower had been expounding the mysteries of the universe to a curious Brahmana. The Brahmana's eyes sparkled with wonder as he listened intently, his mind soaking up the follower's words like a parched earth drinking in the monsoon rains. As the follower finished speaking, the Brahmana's curiosity only deepened. He leaned forward, his hands clasped together in reverence, and asked the follower to reveal to him the secrets of the three qualities: sattva, rajas, and tamas. The follower, sensing the Brahmana's eagerness, nodded his head in agreement. Very well, my dear Brahmana. The follower said, I shall describe to you the virtues of each quality, but first let me tell you that sattva is the greatest of them all. It is a quality of great grandeur, one that lifts the soul up towards the divine. The follower's eyes twinkled as he spoke, and his voice took on a gentle tone like a summer breeze rustling through the leaves. But what about tamas, O wise follower? The Brahmana asked, his brow furrowed with concern. What is its nature? The follower's expression turned somber, and he began to speak in a low, measured tone. Tamas, my dear Brahmana, is characterized by illusion, spiritual ignorance that clouds the mind like a thick fog. It is a quality of foolishness, senselessness, and dreaming, one that leads men astray from the path of righteousness. The follower paused, his eyes scanning the horizon as if searching for a distant memory. Those who are under the influence of tamas are idle, unenergetic, and swayed by anger and haughtiness. They are like ships without anchor, drifting aimlessly on the scene of life. The Brahmana's face fell, his expression filled with sorrow. But the follower continued, undeterred. Rajas, on the other hand, is a quality that incites men to action. It is a spark that ignites the flame of passion within them, driving them forward like a charioteer urging on his horses. The follower's voice grew animated as he spoke, his words painting vivid pictures in the Brahmana's mind. Those who are under the influence of rajas are agreeable in speech, thoughtful, free from envy, and industrious in action. They are like mighty rivers flowing steadily towards their destiny. The follower's gaze turned inward, his eyes gazing into the depths of his own soul. And then there is sattva, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sattva is the quality that lifts us up towards the divine, that makes us see the world with clarity and purpose. He paused, collecting his thoughts before continuing when, in the midst of a serene forest of Brahmana sat in contemplative silence, pondering the mysteries of life and the universe. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, as he sought guidance from Markandeya, a wise sage renowned for his deep understanding of the cosmos. So Yudhishthira, Markandeya, began. The Brahmana asked me a question that has puzzled many seekers of truth. How is it that fire combined with earthly matter becomes the corporeal tenement of living creatures, and how does the vital air, according to the nature of its excite action in the body? Markandeya's eyes sparkled as he replied, the vital spirit, manifesting itself in the seat of consciousness, causes the action of the corporeal frame. The soul, being present in both the spirit and the body, acts through them. The past, present, and future are inseparably associated with the soul. As Markandeya spoke, the forest came alive with the gentle rustling of leaves and the soft chirping of birds. He continued, the soul is the highest possession of a creature of the essence of the Supreme Spirit, and we adore it. It is the animating principle of all creatures. The eternal Purusha, it is great, intelligent, and egoistic, and it is the subjective seat of various properties of elements. Markandeya was allowing the Brahmana to absorb his words. The prana, air, sustains the body in its relations with matter or mind. The samana, air, carries the refused matter of the body to the kidneys and intestines. The udana, air, manifesting itself at junctional points, is known as Vana, and the internal heat, supported by these kinds of air, transforms our food and tissues. As Markandeya's explanation unfolded, the forest grew quieter, as if the very trees were listening intently to his words. The prana and apana airs are interposed within the samana and udana air. The heat generated by their coalition causes the growth of the body, consisting of 7 substances, bones, muscles, and so on. Markandeya's eyes shone with a deep understanding as he continued, a pure-minded person, by purification of his heart, is able to destroy the good and evil effects of his actions and attain eternal beatitude through the enlightenment of his inward spirit. Such a state is likened to the peaceful slumber of one who sleeps soundly, or the brilliance of a lamp trimmed by a skillful hand. Of Brahmana listened intently, his mind expanding with each passing moment of arrest, and anger must be subdued by all means. Markandeya cautioned, this act constitutes the most sacred virtue that people can practice, considered to be the means by which men can cross over to the other side of the sea of affliction and trouble. In a serene, forest-glade, Markandeya sat beside Yudhishthira, sharing with him a profound tale of spiritual transformation. The story unfolded around a humble follower who had stumbled upon the path to liberation. As Markandeya recounted, this ordinary man was once a Brahmana who had been seeking enlightenment. One day, he encountered a mysterious follower who revealed to him the secrets of salvation. The Brahmana was deeply moved by the follower's words and expressed his gratitude, acknowledging that the follower's wisdom seemed boundless. The follower smiled humbly and invited the Brahmana to witness the source of his inner peace. He led him to a magnificent mansion, its beauty rivaling that of the gods' palaces. The Brahmana was amazed by the opulence and grandeur of this dwelling place. Inside, he beheld 2 revered individuals clad in white robes, seated at ease. After their meals, the follower prostrated himself before his parents, who welcomed him with affectionate words. They praised his devotion to them, acknowledging that his self-restraint had earned him a long and fulfilling life filled with knowledge, intelligence, and the realization of his desires. The Brahmana was struck by the depth of their bond and asked about their well-being. The aged couple replied that they were content, surrounded by their servants and children, who were all thriving under the follower's care. They inquired if the Brahmana encountered any difficulties on his journey to their home. Satisfied with his response, they turned to their son and introduced him to the Brahmana as one of their own. The follower then revealed to the Brahmana that his parents were his true idols, to whom he devoted himself completely. He explained that his actions were guided by a deep reverence for them, just as men worship the gods with offerings and rituals. The follower's words were infused with a sense of devotion and love, which resonated deeply within the Brahman. As Markandeya concluded his tale, Yudhishthira listened intently, absorbing the wisdom shared by the humble follower in this story. The lines between ordinary life and spiritual pursuit blurred, revealing that true enlightenment can arise from the simplest of actions.
motivated by love and devotion to those who nurture us.
In a dense forest, Appius Fowler sat with his parents. By his side, he had introduced them to a learned Brahmana who was equally devoted to spiritual pursuits. The Fowler spoke with reverence. Observe, noble sir, how my inner vision has expanded due to the virtue I have cultivated. This is the power of righteousness that grants clarity to one's understanding. The Brahmana, impressed by the Fowler's words, acknowledged his deep connection with truth and devotion. He shared that a wise woman faithful to her husband had sent him to meet this virtuous Fowler who would explain the mysteries of religion. However, as they conversed, the Brahmana revealed that he had left home without his parents' permission to study. The Vedas, his actions had caused them immense grief and suffering, leading to their temporary blindness. The Fowler gently chastised him, saying, "You have erred in abandoning your ascetic and aged parents. Return home immediately to console them. This is a virtue that will never forsake you." Brahmana was taken aback by the Fowler's words. Acknowledging the truth of his actions, he expressed gratitude for the Fowler's advice and vowed to return home without delay. The Fowler continued, "You possess a high mind, ascetic merit, and devotion to your faith, but these qualities have become useless to you due to your neglect of your parents." As they spoke, the Brahmana asked about the Fowler's mysterious past, sensing that he was not born into the Sudra class. The Fowler smiled. "I was once a learned Brahmana, well versed in the Vedas, and leading us through my own fault. I have been degraded to this state." He recounted a previous life, where he had unintentionally wounded a sage with an arrow during a hunting expedition. The Rishi, enraged by his injury, cursed the Fowler, saying that he would be born as a cruel Fowler in the Sudra class. The Fowler shared this story with reverence, acknowledging his past transgression and the consequences of his actions. He expressed gratitude for the Brahmana's guidance and vowed to honor his parents, understanding that this was a virtue above all others. The Brahmana, deeply moved by the Fowler's words, acknowledged that he had been saved from falling into hell due to their unexpected meeting. He praised the Fowler's magnanimity and asked him to reveal the mystery behind his past life as a Brahmana. The Fowler smiled, knowing that this was a story worth sharing, one that would shed light on the complexities of karma and rebirth.
In the heart of a dense forest, a Fowler, known for his skill in hunting birds, chanced upon a sage named Rishi. The Fowler had committed a grave mistake, and the wise Rishi was not pleased. He cursed the Fowler, declaring that he would be born into a lower caste, but would eventually return to his original Brahman status. The Fowler, desperate to appease the sage, approached him with humility and apologized for his actions. He begged for forgiveness, stating that he had acted unwittingly and was not aware of his transgressions. The Rishi, moved by the Fowler's remorse, decided to grant him a favor. Despite being born into a lower caste, the Fowler would remain pious and honor his parents, which would ultimately lead to spiritual perfectionists. The Fowler recounted this tale to a Brahmana. He shared how he had extricated the arrow from Rishi's body and taken him back to his hermitage. The sage recovered from his injury, and the Fowler was overjoyed that his actions had brought about redemption. He went on to explain that people are subject to both happiness and misery, and that it is essential to cultivate spiritual wisdom to overcome mental afflictions. The Brahmana listened attentively, acknowledging the Fowler's intelligence and vast knowledge of sacred texts. He commended the Fowler for being virtuous and learned, stating that true character defines a person's social standing, not their birth or profession. The Brahmana concluded by saying that he believed the Fowler had overcome his past mistakes and was now free from sin. The Fowler shared his wisdom with the Brahmana, explaining that one must not give in to despair, but instead strive for spiritual growth. He emphasized that true knowledge brings happiness and contentment, while ignorance leads to discontent and suffering. The wise person is always at peace, aware of their ultimate destiny and the transience of worldly attachments. The Brahmana was deeply impressed by the Fowler's words and acknowledged his wisdom and vast intelligence before departing. He blessed the Fowler, wishing him prosperity and righteousness in all aspects of life. The Fowler bid farewell to the Brahmana, who returned home to attend to his elderly parents with renewed devotion and dedication. Markandeya, the narrator, concluded this tale by sharing it with King Yudhishthira, who was deeply moved by its moral significance. The king requested Markandeya to continue narrating the story. But the old sage had already finished recounting the virtues of women's devotion to their husbands and filial pietas. The sun set on the kingdom king. Yudhishthira sat in rapt attention, his heart filled with gratitude for the wise words of Markandeya. He knew that this tale would remain etched in his memory, forever a beacon of guidance for him and future generations to come.
In the assembly of sages and kings, the virtuous king, Yudhishthira sat with rapt attention, listening to the wise words of Rishi Markandeya. As the sage's discourse came to an end, Yudhishthira turned to him with a burning curiosity in his eyes. "O revered sir," he said, "I have listened to your tale of the fire god and Anguirus, but there is more I wish to know. Tell me, why did Igni, the carrier of oblations, hide himself in water long ago, and how was it that Anguirus, with his radiant splendor, took on the role of the fire god? During his dissolution, Markandeya's eyes sparkled as he began anew. Tell, in days of yore, he said, that great Anguirus performed a magnificent penance in his hermitage. His austerity was so profound that it illuminated the entire universe, surpassing even the glory of Igni himself. As Markandeya spoke, Yudhishthira's imagination conjured up images of the two deities, each performing their sacred duties with unwavering dedication. But as Anguirus' penance reached its peak, Igni grew increasingly distressed. His radiant splendor was no match for Anguirus, and he felt his own role as the carrier of oblations slipping away. He pondered within himself, wondering what to do. Brahma has created another fire god, he thought, and I have been supplanted by this great monosysitic power. Igni's mind was awhirl with confusion, and doubtless he struggled to come to terms with his new circumstances. Anguirus' hermitage beckoned him with slow, deliberate steps. Igni approached the sage, his heart heavy with fear. But Markandeya's words revealed a different scene. "Do not be dismayed, O destroyer of darkness," Anguirus said to Igni. "You are well known in the three worlds as the primeval fire god created by Brahma to dispel the shadows. Return to your rightful place, and let me officiate as the second or Prajapati." Fire Igni's doubts began to clear, and he saw a way forward. He would relinquish his godhood of fire and allow Anguirus to take on the role. But in return, Igni asked that Anguirus become his child, his firstborn son. Markandeya's words described the scene with vivid clarity. Hearing these words of Anguirus, the fire god did as desired, and O King, Anguirus had a son named Vrihaspati. The gods themselves came to inquire about this mystery, and Anguirus revealed the truth behind his transformations. Yudhishthira listened to Markandeya's tale. His eyes grew wide with wonder.
In the ancient land of Bharatavarsha, where the sacred rivers flowed with life-giving waters, there lived a sage named Anguirus. He was the third son of Brahma, the creator of the universe, and his wife's name was Siva. Theirs was a blessed household filled with the joy of growing children. One day, as Markandeya sat at the feet of King Janimejaya, he began to tell a tale of Anguirus' remarkable family. "O King Markandeya," said, "Anguirus' son Vrihaspati was a giant among men. His heart was large, and his body strong with a mind that shone like the sun. He was renowned for his wisdom, and his counsel was sought by kings and sages. For like as Markandeya spoke, one could almost see Vrihaspati striding across the land, his presence commanding respect. But Anguirus' children were not only sons, he had daughters as well, each one a gem in her own right. The eldest of them all was Bhanumati, a beauty beyond compare. Her face shone like the full moon on a clear night, illuminating all who beheld her. She was the most beautiful of all Anguirus' children. Markandeya said, his voice filled with the next in line was Rega, a name that suited her perfectly, for she was the object of everyone's love. Creatures great and small adored her without reserve. Her gentle spirit and kind heart made her a beloved presence in the household. As Markandeya spoke, one could almost see Rega smelling at the children who played around her feet. Then there were Sinavali and Artismati, two sisters, as different as night and day. Sinavali was a slender maiden, so delicate that she seemed to fade into the shadows at times. Yet, like River's daughter, she possessed an otherworldly beauty that captivated all who saw her. Artismati, on the other hand, shone with a radiance that lit up the world around her. Her name meant great refulgence for good reason. As Markandeya continued his tale, he spoke of Havishmati and Mahesmati, two sisters who embodied the virtues of their names. Havishmati accepted all oblations with an open heart, while Mahabharata was a paragon of piety, her devotion to the sacred arts inspiring awe in all who knew her, but Aindir's family was not yet complete. There were more daughters waiting to be told about. Markandeya's voice took on a note of wonder as he spoke of Mahabharata, the seventh daughter. She is always present at sacrifices of great splendor, he said, his eyes shining with excitement. Her name means great wisdom, and it suits her perfectly, for she possesses the depth of understanding. In the ancient days, Markandeya began to recite a tale of Vrishyaspati's lineage. The venerable sage had a wife named Tara from the lunar world, and she bore him 6 sons who embodied the fire's energy of fire. Among them was Sanju, a great ascetic with unparalleled merit, whose honor oblations were offered at the Purnamasiya, and assumed the sacrifices. As Markandeya spoke, his words conjured up visions of Sanju's wife Satya, a paragon of beauty, born from Dharma itself. She was the embodiment of truth and radiated an air that mesmerized all who beheld her. The blazing fire that was their son Sanju had 3 daughters of great spiritual merit, each one shining with the light that illuminated the path to righteousness. Sanju's firstborn was Bharadwajya, whose honor oblations were offered at every full moon sacrifice. His second son, Varata, was another mighty fire, honored by the sacrificial ladle in all Purnamasiya sacrifices. The elder Bharata had a daughter named Arata and a younger son of the same name, both revered for their spiritual prowess. Markandeya's words painted vivid pictures of these fires, each one unique, yet connected to the others through the cosmic dance of creation. Vaira, Aradwaja's wife, gave birth to Vaira, who was worshipped like Sama, with offerings of clarified butter, and was known as Rath, the Prabhu Rathavwana. And Kumhartas Markandeya continued his tale. He spoke of Siddhi, the son born to Vaira, and Sarayu. This radiant fire enveloped the sun in its splendor, illuminating all that it touched. Its pure flame was a beacon of hope, guiding seekers on their journey towards enlightenment. Next, Markandeya mentions Satya, the sinless fire, blazing with an untainted flame. He was the regulator of time, free from all taint and defilement. His son Swana was the generator of all diseases, inflicting suffering upon those who cried out in anguish. Yet even this terrible fire had a role to play in the grand tapestry of existence. Sees Markandeya's narrative unfolded. He introduced Viswalja, Vrishyaspati's third son, of fire, known as the internal heat that digested the food of all creatures. This self-restrained and spiritually meritorious fire was worshipped by Brahmanas that take a sacrifices. The sacred river Gomata was his wife, and through her all righteous men performed their rites. Markandeya's words painted the picture of this tranquil scene where the gentle waters of the Gomata flowed in harmony with the cosmic wreath. Next, he spoke of Vedeva, the terrible water-drinking sea, ire that moved upwards, seated in a distant era. Ukta, a devoted sage, embarked on an arduous penance, seeking to conceive a son who would rival the great Brahma himself in reputation. For many years he fasted and meditated, his heart burning with an unyielding desire for spiritual ascension. As Ukta's invocation reached its crescendo, the air was filled with the sacred hymns of the Vehartai, and the 5 sacred fires blazed forth with a fierce intensity. The sages Kasyapa, Vasis, the Prana, Chaivana, and Suvarkeka joined forces to amplify Ukta's plea, their collective energy coalescing into a brilliant being of unbridled power. The celestial entity, born from the confluence of their combined penance, was a being of breathtaking radiance. Its head blazed like a fiery furnace, its arms shone with the golden light of the sun, and its skin and eyes glimmered with an otherworldly sheen. The 5 sages had imbued it with their own essence, infusing it with the colors of their respective realms: fire, sun, gold, and darkness. As the being took form, Ukta's penance reached its culmination with a mighty roar. He summoned forth the primal forces of creation from his very core. From his head and mouth emerged Riot and Rathandra, the twin deities of day and night, who would forever chase after the fleeting breath of life. Next, Ukta brought forth Siva, the embodiment of cosmic balance, from his navel Indra. The storm god burst forth from his mighty chest, wind and fire erupted from his very soul. The hymns Udat and Anudatta sprang to life from his arms, while the mind and 5 senses emerged as manifestations of his boundless creativity. As Ukta's creation reached its zenith, he brought forth 25 divine beings, each with their own distinct essence. Among these were Pranadai, Vanasabhava, and Anudatta, all renowned for their extraordinary powers. These beings would go on to shape the very fabric of existence. However, Ukta's creation was not without its challenges. 15 other gods born from his own essence emerged as formidable adversaries determined to thwart the sacred rites performed by mortals in honor of the celestial deities. Sodoma, Emma, and their kin would forever seek to disrupt the balance of the cosmos, frustrating the prayers and offerings made to the gods. Despite these challenges, Uth's creation continued to flourish. His son Raduk, a being of great power, came to reside on earth, where he was revered by pious men who performed the sacred Agnihotra sacrifices in his honor. Another son, Rathantara, was said to be appeased by offerings made in his name. In the ancient lore of the sages, Markandeya spoke of the fires that burn within and without. He began by telling of Bharata, a fire so bound by strict ascetic rules that it was said to bestow development on all living beings. When satisfied, this same fire was also known as Pushamatai for its power to nourish and sustain us. Markandeya continued his tale. He spoke of another fire, Seva, devoted to the worship of the forces of nature. This fire, too, was revered for its ability to alleviate the suffering of all creatures, hence its name. Seva, or the giver of Gutapa, a wise and powerful fire, had acquired great ascetic wealth. From this wealth were born 3 sons, Purana, Ushma, and Manu. The latter Manu would go on to become Prajapati, a title bestowed upon him for his role as the creator of living beings. The Brahmanas, learned in the Vedas, spoke of Samu, a fire so radiant that it shone like gold. They also told of Avasathaya, another brilliant fire whose refulgence illuminated all who beheld it. Tapa had created 5 Urchaskara, fires each as bright as gold, which shared in the samba, drink offered in sacrifices. When the great sun god grew weary from his daily labors, he was known as Praisata, a fire that brought peace and tranquility to all. It was this fire who created the Isharas and other creatures of the earth. Angaras too had created Prajapati, Vanu, the son of Tepa, whom the Brahmanas called Vrahabanu, and married Praja, the daughter of Surya, and Brihabanu was born to them. Their 6 sons would go on to become great fires in their own right. Valida, the giver of strength, Manjuman, whose fierce aspect struck awe into all who beheld him. Angaras, or Dretaman, honored with oblations of clarified butter at the Darsa, and Purnamasya, sacrifices Agrayana, to whom the Agrayana oblation was offered. Agraha, the source of daily oblations for the Chaturmasya rites, and Stuvaman, his daughter Nasa, married Vanu and gave birth to 2 Agnishamas and 5 other fire gods. Among these were Vaiswanara, honored with the first oblations in company with the presiding deity of the clouds, and Viswapati, the lord of all worlds. The sages spoke of Swistika, man's daughter, who had once been the wife of Hiranyakasipu, but was now one of the Prajapatis. They also told us,
in a world where flames danced and waters flowed, Markandeya began to recount an ancient tale. It was said that Mudita, the beloved wife of Swaha, the fire god, resided in the depths of the unseen, and from their union a sacred fire named Advanta was born. This magnificent being was revered as the ruler and inner soul of all creatures, radiant with splendor and power. Markandeya spoke. His words conjured images of the great Zeus, those mighty forces that governed the universe. Among them Advanta stood out, for he was the very essence of the earth, sky, and waters. His son Advuta was an awe-inspiring fire, said to be the soul of the waters, prince of the skies, and lord of all things great. As Markandeya continued his tale, a new figure emerged, Grihapati, the powerful prime fire who dwelled within Advanta's being. This fire was ever present at sacrifices, carrying the oblations of mortals to the gods. Yet whenever Nayata, the first Pretu, approached him, Swaha would hide himself in the sea, fearing contamination. The gods, searching far and wide for their beloved prime fire, finally discovered his whereabouts through Atharvan. A wise and valiant being, moved by their plight, Atharvan took on the task of carrying the oblations to the gods. But when Grihapati learned of this arrangement, he vanished once more, leaving behind only whispers of his whereabouts. Atharvan's efforts, however, were soon rewarded as he chanced upon Swaha hiding in the sea. The prime fire, now weakened by age and fatigue, begged Atharvan to assume the role of carrier for the gods. Moved by compassion, Atharvan accepted this sacred duty, only to have Grihapati disappear once more as Markandeya's narrative unfolded it. became clear that Swaha had grown old and frail, his strength waning with each passing day. In a final act of devotion, he entrusted his material body to the earth, where it gave rise to various metals, iron, glass, and precious stones. The clouds were formed from his nails, corals from his veins, and the very fabric of the world was imbued with these substances. As Swaha's physical form dissolved into the cosmos, his essence remained a blazing fire that burned within Atharvan's heart. And so the great sage Frey and Aenirus performed austerities to revive this sacred flame. When it finally blazed forth once more, Swaha sought refuge in the sea, only to be rediscovered by Atharvan. The world held its breath as the prime fire was reborn, his power now greater than ever before. And from that moment on, Atharvan carried the oblations of all creatures to the gods, while Swaha continued to reside in the depths.
In the ancient days, Markandeya began to recount an extraordinary tale to the Sinlation of Kura's race. Listen, now he said, to the story of the birth of Kartikya, the intelligent son of the Yadyu fire. The gods and Asurus were locked in a fire struggle with the terrible Asurus, consistently defeating the divine. Ospurendra, a mighty Indra, gazed out upon his ravaged armies and knew he needed to find a leader who could reorganize them. He pondered deeply on this matter as he wandered through the majestic Manasa mountains, where the earth's secrets whispered themselves in the wind. It was there that he heard the anguished cries of a woman, her voice carrying far and wide across the landscapio. "Someone come quickly," she wailed. "Rescue me, either be my husband, or tell me who will be mine." Indra's heart stirred with compassion as he approached the weeping woman. He reassured her. "Fear not, fair one, I am here to protect you." But his words were interrupted by a figure emerging from the distance. Kizan, an Azure adorned in a gleaming crown and grasping a mighty Masikizan, sneered at Indra's words, taunting him with the promise of battle. "Leave her alone, O slayer of Take," he jeered. "I shall possess her, and you will not return home alive with that." Kizan hurled his mass, which Indra swiftly shattered with his thunderbolt. Undeterred, the Azure flung a massive boulder at the god, but Indra rent it asunder with his bolt, sending it crashing to the ground. Kizan stumbled back, wounded by the falling rock, and fled into the depths of the mountains, abandoning the lady he had sought to claim. Indra turned to her once more, his eyes filled with kindness. "Tell me, fair one," he asked gently, "who are you? Whose wife are you? What brings you to this place?" The woman's tears began to dry as she looked up at the mighty god, and perhaps for the first time in a long while felt a glimmer of hope. In the rolling hills of the Manasa mountains, two sisters, Devesna and Daidyasna, would often visit with their maids to indulge in leisure activities. Courtsaya Prajapati's permission. Their frequent sojourns had made them familiar faces among the locals, particularly to Azure. Izan, who would regularly pay his respects to them. However, while Devesna maintained her composure towards him, Daidyasna succumbed to his advances and was subsequently taken away by Kizanin. The mighty Lord of the Celestials chanced upon Devesna during one of these visits, recognizing her kinship with him through their shared maternal heritage. He took it upon himself to rescue her from potential harm. Upon learning of Daidyasna's fate, Indra felt a sense of responsibility and decided to assist Devesna in finding a suitable husband. Devesna, aware of her own limitations as the daughter of Prajapati, requested Indra to select an invincible partner for her. With her father's boon, she envisioned a powerful being who would be revered by both gods and Azures alike. Indra, intrigued by her confidence, asked Devesna to describe the qualities she sought in her future husband. As they conversed, Indra observed the celestial ball unfolding before him, the sun rising over the Udaya hill, the moon gliding into its orbit, and the great summer moon uniting with the sun. The air was charged with anticipation as he witnessed the union of the solar deities and the ominous signs that foretold a catastrophic battle on the morrow. Indra's thoughts were interrupted by the mighty river Sindhu flowing with fresh blood and jackals crying out to the sun. He realized that this conjunction was not only a harbinger of war, but also an opportunity for creation. If Sama, the moon, could give birth to a son, he might become Devesna's suitable Mak. The Lord of the Celestials hastened to Brahma, seeking his guidance and intervention in finding a worthy husband for Devesa. The grandsire, pleased with Indra's intentions, promised that their union would produce a powerful offspring who would be the joint leader of Indra's forces. With Brahma's blessing, Indra and Devesna set out to find an ideal suitor. They traveled to the region where the great Brahmanas, including Vasistha and other celestial rishis, resided. The gods, eager to partake in the summer beverage, joined Indra at their head as they attended the rishis' sacrifices. As the advute of fire was invited with sacred mantras, it emerged from the solar disk, restraining its speech. This majestic fire, carrying oblations, entered the sacrificial fire and transferred them to the dwellers of heaven, witnessing this wondrous sight. In the ancient times, Markandeya told the tale of divine love and cosmic power. It began with Swaha, the beautiful wife of Angiras, one of the 7 rishis. She was consumed by her desire for Agni, the fire god, and sought him out in secret. Swaha, disguised as Siva, approached Agni and confessed her feelings to him. O Agni, she said, I am tortured with love for thee. Do thou think it fit to woo me? If thou dost not accede to my request, know that I shall commit self-destruction. Agni was taken aback by her words and asked how she knew of his own desire. Swaha revealed that the wives of the other rishis had sent her to Agni's presence, knowing that he too harbored feelings for Swaha. Thou art always a favorite with us, she said, but we are afraid of thee now, having read thy mind by well-known signs. They have sent to thee presents. Agni, filled with joy and delight, married Swaha in the guise of Siva. Divine Kupalka abided, and Swaha held the semen virile in her hands. But she knew that if anyone were to observe them together, it would bring shame upon the Brahmana ladies who had sent her on this mission. To avoid this, she transformed into a bird and flew out of the forest, reaching the flight mountain. The mountain was guarded by 7-headed serpents with poison in their looks, Rakshasas, Isaacas, and various creatures. Swaha quickly ascended a peak and threw the semen into a golden lake, assuming successive forms. As the wives of the high-souled 7 rishis, she continued to dally with Agni, but on account of Arunaci's great ascetic merit and devotion to her husband Vasistha, Swaha was unable to assume her form. She threw 6 times into that lake the semen of Agni, producing a male child endowed with great power. This child, Skanda, had 6 faces, 12 ears, as many eyes, hands and feet, 1 neck and 1 stomach. As Skanda grew in size, he shone like the sun rising in the midst of a mass of red clouds. He seized the terrific bow used by the destroyer of Tripura for the destruction of the enemies of the gods, and uttered a terrible roar that struck awe into the 3 worlds. The great Nagas, Chitra, and Ereva were shaken with fear. Skanda held them in his hands, playing about on the hilltop, making a terrible noise. He looked as if he were on the point of devouring the 3 worlds, shining like the bright sun god at the moment of his ascension in the heavens. The mighty Mahasana of unparalleled prowess, seated on the top of that hill, observed. In the ancient days, when the powerful being Skanda was born, the very fabric of the universe trembled. Fearful phenomena occurred, and the natural order was disrupted. The rishis, wise men who sought the welfare of the world, observed these prodigies with anxious hearts, trying to restore balance to the universes. They struggled to comprehend the cause of this chaos. Various theories emerged. Some believed that Agni, the god of fire, had cohabited with the 6 wives of the 7 rishis, causing the disturbance. Others thought it was a bird, while many others pointed fingers at different culprits. But no one suspected Swaha, Skanda's mother, who had been born from the sacrificial fire. Swaha herself revealed her true identity to Skanda, and when the 7 rishis learned that their son was hers, they divorced their wives, except for Arundhati, who was revered by all as a paragon of virtue. Swaha protested, saying these 6 women are not his mothers. The rishis, however, were convinced that Skanda's birth had brought misfortune upon them. As the news of Skanda's birth spread, the great Mani Viswamitra, who had been following Agni unseen, knew everything about the events unfolding. He sought protection from Mahasana and performed the sacred rites for Skanda's benefit. Viswamitra also promoted the virtues of the 6-faced Skanda, performing ceremonies in his honor. Meanwhile, the gods in heaven were perplexed by Skanda's growing prowess. They urged Indra, the king of the gods, to kill Skanda before he became too powerful, but Indra hesitated, knowing that Skanda could destroy even the creator of the universe, the gods, then proposed sending the great mothers to eliminate Skanda. However, upon beholding the infant's incredible might, the mothers were intimidated and sought his protection. Instead, they offered their breasts for him to suckle, and Mahasana, the mighty one, accepted their offer with respect as he nursed from the mother's breast. Agni, his father, arrived on the scene, honored by his son. The goddesses, born of Anger and the sea, took turns nursing Skanda. Like a mother would her own child, Agni transformed himself into a traitor with a goat's mouth, accompanied by numerous children to amuse and delight Skanda in his mountain abode. And so the mighty being was cared for by his father and the great mothers, surrounded by love and affection. In the realm of heaven a grand assembly had gathered to witness the impending battle between Mahasna, the mighty warrior, and Sakra, the illustrious sovereign of the gods, the planets with their satellites, the rishis, the mothers, Agni and Complis. Other celestial beings waited anxiously for the conflict to begin as Sakra. Prepared for battle, he donned his finest attire and mounted his majestic elephant Airavata with a retinue of gods by his side, including the revered mothers. He marched toward Skanda with determination in his heart. At the forefront of this celestial army was Mahasna, his thunderbolt at the ready, followed by an entourage of warriors clad in various armor and riding diverse animals as Sakra approached the abode of Kartikya. The mighty warrior let out a thunderous roar to rally his troops and charge forward with unrelenting ferocity. The sound was like nothing heard before, a cacophony that shook the very foundations of heaven itself. Skanda's loyal companion responded in kind, unleashing a war cry that echoed through the realms, rivaling the mighty sea's roar. The celestial army trembled at the sheer force of this duel, their movements frozen as if transfixed by some unseen power. Mahasna, fueled by rage and defiance, unleashed flames from his mouth, engulfing the gods in a blaze of fire that reduced them to nothing more than smoldering embers. Their bodies, arms, and riding animals were consumed, leaving behind only the faint glow of stars displaced from their celestial orbits. The gods, realizing their predicament, renounced their allegiance to Sakra's thunderbolt and sought refuge beneath Skanda's protection. This sudden shift in allegiance restored peace to the realm momentarily, staving off the impending doom that threatened to engulf them all. Yet Sakra refused to yield, hurling his thunderbolt at Skanda with unyielding ferocity. The bolt pierced the young warrior on his right side, and as it passed through his body a new being emerged. Visekat, a youth adorned with celestial amulets and wielding a mighty club. The gods watched in awe as this new entity rose from Skanda's body, their fears momentarily forgotten in the face of this miraculous rebirth. Indra, Sakra himself, was overcome with trepidation, beseeching Skanda for protection, his hands clasped together in reverence. And so with a gentle gesture, Skanda bid Indra to renounce all fear, and as he did, the gods were transported with joy, their spirits lifted by this act of kindness. In that moment, the celestial army was reborn, united once more under the benevolent guidance of Kartikya, their hearts filled with renewed hope and devotion. In the midst of a great tale, Markandeya paused to recount a story of wonder and awe. Listen closely, O king, he said, his eyes shining with excitement, as I tell you of Skanda's magnificent offspring. It was during the epic battle between the gods and demons that Skanda, the divine warrior, was struck by a thunderbolt from Indra. The impact created a multitude of male children born with an otherworldly era, who roamed the battlefield, their eyes gleaming with mischief. They were known as the Chimeras, little children of great power and strength. Among these Chimeras was Vajrasekha, a being with the face of a goat, whose dexterous nature and kind heart earned him the respect of all. He stood tall, surrounded by his numerous sons and daughters, whom he guarded with fierce devotion in the presence of the great mothers. The inhabitants of the earth revered Skanda as the father of these Chimeras, and it was said that those who sought to have children of their own should worship Rudra, the powerful fire god, and Yuva, the benevolent Swahas. Markandeya spoke. His words conjured images of a bygone era. The daughters born from the fire god Tapa approached Skanda, their faces radiant with hope. "What can we do for you?" Skanda asked, his voice like thunder in their minds. The girls replied, "Grant us your blessing that we may become respected mothers to all the world." Skanda's response was immediate. Be it so. With a wave of his hand he bestowed upon them the power to bear children. The 7 mothers, Kekai Helam, Malanivrihila, Arya, Palala, and Vaimitra, were overjoyed. They had been blessed with a powerful son, Siza, born from Skanda's divine energy. This 8th hero was said to be the most formidable of all. His red eyes blazing like embers, his reputation as a mighty warrior spread far and wide. But there was more to this tale. Markandeya continued. The 6th face of Skanda, that of a goat, was revered by the mothers. It was said to be the source of Vajrasekha's power, the head from which he created divine energy. This magnificent being was regarded as the best of all Skanda's heads. The events Markandeya described had unfolded on the 5th day of the bright half of the lunar month, a time of great significance in the celestial realm. The battle that followed on the 6th day was fierce and terrifying, with Skanda's offspring playing a crucial role in its outcome. As Markandeya finished his tale, the atmosphere seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy. The listeners were left to ponder the wonders of this ancient story, their minds filled with visions of mighty warriors and divine. In a resplendent celestial court, Skanda, the 6-day-old god was being hailed as the savior of the universe. Markandeya continued his tale, describing Skanda's majestic appearance adorned with a golden amulet and wreath. He wore a crest and crown of gold, his eyes shining like golden coins, and his sharp teeth gleaming in a radiant smile. His red garments sparkled, and his handsome features drew the attention of all who beheld him. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, appeared before Skanda, bestowing her blessings upon him. As he basked in her favor, he became an even more magnificent sight to behold, like the full moon shining brightly in the night sky. The Brahmanas and Maharshis approached him, paying their respects and offering prayers. May you be prosperous, O Skanda. They said, you have brought peace to our world, and we ask that you become our Indra, our protector and leader. Skanda listened intently, his curiosity piqued by their words. He asked them about the duties of Indra, the lord of the 3 worlds, who granted strength, power, and happiness to all creatures. The Maharshis explained that Indra was a mighty god capable of destroying evil and fulfilling the desires of the righteous. Skanda's eyes sparkled with interest as he listened, his mind racing with the possibilities. He asked them about their own relationship with Indra, how they had come to know him, and what qualities made him worthy of their respect. Sekra, the king of the gods, stepped forward, his voice filled with reverence. Almighty Skanda, he said, we ask that you become our leader, our Indra. You possess unparalleled prowess, and we believe that you are destined to bring great honor to us. All Skanda's heart swelled with humility as he listened to Sekra's words. I am but a humble servant of the gods, he replied. I do not covet your sovereignty, but I will serve you with loyalty and devotion. Sekra smiled, his eyes shining with gratitude. Your bravery is renowned throughout the realms. He said, we ask that you vanquish our enemies, the Danavas, and bring peace to our world. Skanda's face lit up with determination as he accepted the challenge. He knew that this was a great responsibility, but he was ready to face whatever lay ahead with Sekra's blessings. Skanda donned the role of Indra, leading the celestial forces into battle against their enemies. As Skanda rode forth on his chariot, surrounded by his loyal followers, the gods and goddesses looked up on him with pride. His red cock, given to him by the fire god, perched proudly atop his vehicle, a symbol of his power and strength. The divine armor imbued with it. In the realm of the celestial forces, a great leader emerged. Mahasna, his good fortune had caught the attention of the 6 virtuous ladies, the wives of the 7 rishis, disowned by their husbands due to a false rumor that they had given birth to Mahasna. These ladies sought refuge with him. They approached Mahasna's camp, their hearts heavy with sorrow and indignation. We have been cast out by our godlike husbands without any cause, they said. Some people spread the rumor that we gave birth to you, believing in the truth of this story. They became greatly indignant and banished us from our sacred places. They implored Mahasna to save them from this infamy. Moved by their plea, Mahasna replied, O ladies of faultless character, do you accordingly become my mothers? I am your son, and ye shall attain all the objects of your desires. They accepted his offer. Sekra, the leader of the gods, approached Skanda, Mahasna, with a request. The Lady Apajit, the younger sister of Rohini, has been performing austerities in the woods, he said. She is jealous of her seniority and wants to be the leader of the celestial forces. Sekra asked Skanda to consult Brahma on how to fill up the vacant position. Skanda agreed to help and consulted with Brahma. Together they created a new Astras, and Kritika, presided over by Agni, which shone brightly in the heavens. Vayata, another goddess, also approached Skanda, expressing her desire to live with him always. Thou art as a son to me, she said, and entitled to offer me the funeral cakes at my funeral obsequies. Skanda accepted her request and promised to guide her with a mother's affection. The great mothers then spoke to Skanda, saying, we have been described by the learned as the mothers of all creatures, but we desire to be their mothers. Do thou honor us. They asked him to dispossess the other ladies of their dignity and install them in their places. Skanda agreed, but with the condition he could not restore those who had already been given away. However, he offered them another favor. He shall live with me in assuming different shapes, be able to eat up the progeny of those mothers, and their guardians, the great mothers, accepted this offer and promised to protect the children. Skanda then granted them a fierce, inexhaustible spirit, which would afflict children until they reached their 16th year. He also created 18 evil spirits who would take up residence in the lion room for 10 days, causing destruction and chaos among newborns. These evil spirits were known as the Chimeras, the husbands of the great mothers. They included Sekunat Putna Rachazayas. In a distant realm, Skanda, the mighty being had bestowed upon Swat, the daughter of Deksha, the power to grant exquisite happiness. She appeared before him and expressed her deepest desire to live forever with Utasana. The fire god, as his wife Skanda, moved by her plea, replied that he would ensure that all oblations made to the gods or ancestors with purifying hymns would be coupled with the name of Swaha, thus allowing her to live eternally associated with Igni, the god of fire. Swat was overjoyed and pleased with Skanda's words. She returned to her husband Pavika, surrounded by the radiant light of prosperity, and honored him in return. The celestial beings rejoiced at this union, and their happiness echoed throughout the realms as the celestial army prepared for battle. Brahma, the lord of all creatures, instructed Mahasana, Skanda's brother, to visit his father Mahadeva, the conqueror of Trikura. Rudra, coalescing with Agni, had combined with Yuma and Swaha to make Mahasana invincible. For the well-being of all creatures, Mahasana set out on his journey accompanied by a multitude of gods and Paisikas, including the twin Muika and Menjika, born from the semen of Rudra. As he traveled, he encountered various spirits, each with their own unique powers and characteristics. The learned men were instructed to remember these spirits and offer worship to them. Upon reaching the White Mountain, Mahasana was anointed as leader of the celestial army. The gods and goddesses, including Hera, Mahadeva riding in a chariot, shining with sun-like refulgence, repaired to a place called Vaidrabad. They were accompanied by 1,000 lions drawn by Kela and passed through blank space, striking terror into the hearts of all creatures. As they marched towards the White Mountain, the celestial beings sang hymns and offered prayers to Mahadeva, the granter of boons. The gods of war, led by Indra, accompanied by their attendants, formed the vanguard of the army. Behind them rode Rudra in his white chariot, reassuring the gods with the exhibition of his powers. The celestial beings, including Apsaras, Rishis, celestials, Gandharvas, serpents, Sars, planets, and children of gods, followed Mahadeva in his train. The clouds marched, making obeisance to that god, armed with the Pinika, Bauagni, and Vayu, busied themselves with 2 hairy fans, while Indra, accompanied by the Rajarshas, sang hymns in praise of Mahadeva, Garai, Vidya, Yanharai, Kizanai, and Mitra. Along with Savitri, proceeded in the train of Parvati. In the serene hermitage, Draupadi and Satyavama reunited after a long time, their hearts filled with joy as they locked merrily and seated themselves comfortably. The 2 ladies, known for their sweet conversation, began to discuss various delightful topics, drawing from the stories of the Kuras and Yida. Satyavama, the favorite wife of Krishna and daughter of Satyajit, asked Draupadi in private, "How do you manage to rule over the sons of Pandu, those heroes with great strength and beauty? They seem so obedient to you, never showing anger towards you. Tell me, what is the secret behind this?" She inquired about various practices that might be contributing to Draupadi's influence over her husbands. Draupadi, the blessed daughter of Drupada, smiled kindly at Satyavama and replied, "You ask me about wicked women who pursue incantations and drugs. But I must tell you, my dear friend, that such practices can lead to fear in one's husband, causing him to dread his wife like a serpent in the bedroom. A man troubled by fear cannot have peace, and one without peace cannot be happy." She continued, "A husband is never made obedient through incantations or wicked means. We hear of diseases being transmitted by enemies who send poison disguised as gifts. Wicked women sometimes cause harm to their husbands through such means, but a wife should never cause injury to her lord. Instead, I follow the path of devotion and service." Draupadi explained how she always served the sons of Pandu with deep devotion, controlling her desires and wrath. She waited upon them without feeling degraded by her services, fearing to utter anything evil or false. She also ensured that their household was well-ordered and clean, serving food at the proper time. She revealed how she never indulged in angry speech, imitated wicked women, or stayed long in places where she might be tempted by pleasure. Draupadi always engaged in waiting upon her lords, finding separation from them unbearable when her husband left home. For a relative's sake, she would renounce flowers and fragrant, past undergoing penances. "I have dedicated myself to the good of my lord," Draupadi said. "I follow the duties taught by my mother-in-law regarding relatives as well as those of almsgiving, worshipping the gods, offering oblations to the deceased, boiling food on auspicious days for ancestors and guests. I discharged these duties day and night without idleness. But his words were filled with humility and devotion. She regarded her husbands as poisonous snakes capable of being excited at a trifle, and considered it eternal virtue for women to have regard for their husband. The husband was the wife's god, her refuge, and there was no other refuge for her. As she spoke,